Hello and welcome to this week's video and the latest instalment in my A Guide To series, where I show you how to undertake those complicated railway journeys. With all the damp weather and whatnot, you'd be forgiven for thinking I'm back home in the UK, but I'm actually outside Madrid Puerta de Atocha, the main railway station here in the Spanish capital. I'm here to begin my journey to the Portuguese capital Lisbon, which, prior to the pandemic, would have been as simple as hopping on Renfe's overnight sleeper train, the Trenhotel, which provided a direct rail link between the two cities. However, in March 2020, when COVID and lockdowns were sweeping across Europe, the Spanish national operator took the ever-popular decision of cancelling all their sleeper services, resulting in there no longer being a direct rail link between the two cities. As you can see from this map, you are now required to take a minimum of 3 trains to travel between the two capitals. This includes an overnight layover in the beautiful border city of Badajoz, as well as a further change of train once across the border in Entroncamento. As I'm sure you can imagine, this is a bit of a faff really, especially when you consider there are several air and bus links between the two cities every day. Anyway, that's enough of me waffling on, let's get this journey started. But before we do, be sure to subscribe and enable notifications as I publish new trip reports every Friday. Upon entering the main concourse at Puerta Atocha, you'll be greeted by something you've probably never seen in a railway station before, or at least I hadn't, and that is the famous tropical garden. The garden features over 400 species of plants from all over the world and is even home to more than 300 turtles. Ordinarily, you'd be able to go for a wander around the garden while you wait for your train. However, it's currently sealed off to visitors, probably due to some COVID-related excuse. Moving further into the station, you'll find a fairly good selection of shops and eateries. It's worth noting that catering is currently suspended on all Renfe services, which is a bit strange considering that all forms of dining were permitted elsewhere in Spain at the time of recording. My whinging aside, the journey to Badajoz takes over 5 hours, so you're going to want to make sure to pack some form of food and drink. Our ride to Badajoz today will be aboard one of Renfe's Talgo services. These services operate on the wider Iberian gauge lines, meaning we'll be departing from the Cercanías platforms. Cercanías is simply the name Renfe gives to most of its short-distance commuter trains. In order to access the platforms when you're taking an intercity service, it's not immediately obvious, but you need to head to this little bit off to the side of the gate line in order to have your ticket checked and access granted. Ticket check complete, we now find ourselves in a little waiting area which just features a few seats and some overpriced vending machines. However, the waiting room has no departure boards and announcements in this part of the station are only made in Spanish. Now paranoid I might not understand the announcements and miss my train, I made my way out to the platform area in the hope of finding a departure board with my train on it, but to no avail. Eventually, I heard an announcement containing the words Badajoz and BSAs. Using my Dora the Explorer level Spanish, I determined that our train must be departing from platform 6, and sure enough, a few minutes later, one of Renfe's loco-hauled Talgo sets rocked up. The service is hauled by a pair of Class 334 diesel-electric locomotives which were designed by Renfe and Alstom and built by Boslo España in the mid to late 2000s. Trailing the locomotives is a rake of Talgo 6 coaches dating from the 1980s. These coaches feature Talgo's passive tilt technology, allowing for a more comfortable experience when the train is rounding curves. As we board, let's just take a quick look at second class, or Turista as Renfe calls it. As you can see, this is laid out in a 2+2 configuration, consisting mainly of airline-style seats. I did a full review on this last year and you can find that video in the top right corner now. Moving further through the train, we find the cafeteria, although as I mentioned earlier, this is still closed. Then we find where I'll be travelling today, Turista Plus. Turista Plus basically means you get to sit in Renfe's big plush preferente or first class seats, but without the complimentary food service. Note that as a result of the pandemic, Renfe are currently not offering preferente on any of their services. The seats feature plenty of legroom as well as a footrest, seat back pocket and a personal litter bin. The seats also feature a nice big tray table, although it is a bit on the flimsy side. They can also be reclined a little and feature controls for the entertainment system, although this isn't currently being used, yep, you guessed it, as a result of the pandemic. Lastly, the seats are pretty well padded and nicely shaped, providing a fairly comfortable experience overall. My ticket for this leg of the trip cost me €34.05, which was only about €4 more than a Turista ticket, a well worthwhile upgrade in my opinion. We depart Madrid for Badajoz on time just before 20 to 5 in the afternoon. This leg of the trip is scheduled to take 5 hours and 8 minutes and will very briefly hit a top speed of 200 km an hour or 125 miles an hour. As we make our way out of the Spanish capital, we pass the depot where Renfe maintains some of its high-speed AVE trains. I'll be covering a couple of these trains in future reviews, so stay tuned for that.
La tripulación está a su disposición y en nombre de Renfe les desea un feliz viaje. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board this train destination Badajoz. During the journey, we will be announcing the stops along the way. You may find earphones at your seat to listen to music or watch a film.
We soon find ourselves out of Madrid's sprawling suburbs and in the vast Spanish countryside where we'll remain for much of the trip. En route, we stop in Talavera de la Reina, which is well known for its pottery production. A short time later, we pass, and excuse the fact I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, Castillo de Oropesa. This castle dates back to the 12th and 13th century, and it was determined that it was most likely built by the Arabs. As we travel across the Spanish countryside, here's just a quick insert about my Patreon page. Patrons gain access to most of my videos 2 weeks before everyone else, and best of all, without all those pesky ads. You can get this for as little as $1 a month. A link to my Patreon page can be found in the top right corner of the screen now. After departing Navarral, we spend a while following the banks of the river Tagus. At 1007 kilometers or 626 miles long, this is the longest river on the Iberian Peninsula, stretching from just east of Madrid all the way through to Lisbon. Shortly after leaving the river behind, we arrive at the city of Cáceres. The city was founded by the ancient Romans and nowadays is home to just shy of 100,000 people. I even made time for a day in Cáceres earlier in my trip, and trust me from experience, it's well worth a visit if you ever find yourself in the area. It's a beautiful little city. On the approach to the city of Merida, we pass Aqueducto de los Milagros, or Aqueduct of Miracles to give its English translation. And what a miracle it is, as it's beautifully preserved to say it's thought to have been built by the Romans as far back as the 1st century AD. The structure forms just one part of the archaeological ensemble of Merida, which encompasses all of the city's impressive Roman architecture and is rightly a UNESCO World Heritage Site. A few moments later, we arrive at Merida station, where we'll be stopped for around 15 minutes while the driver and locomotives change ends, as there are no through platforms at this station. Pretty much everyone got off here, allowing me to finally show you the wheelchair accessible spaces which can be found at the end of my coach. With the driver and locomotives having now switched ends, we leave Merida and continue for the final 40 minutes towards Badajoz. It's the last little bit of this leg between Merida and Badajoz that we achieve our top speed of 200 km an hour. While these Talgo coaches are really quite noisy, even at these sorts of speeds I found the ride quality to be nice and smooth, with very little in the way of vibrations.
Ladies and gentlemen, next station, Badajoz. End of our trip. Thank you for travelling with Renfe.
Eventually, we pull into the border city of Badajoz about 15 minutes late at 10 PM. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have an overnight layover here before continuing on to Portugal tomorrow afternoon. By the way, sorry about the lack of decent footage as we exit the station, but as we pulled in, it's no exaggeration to say there were about 10 security officers standing there. Given I'd already had a bit of trouble for filming in Spain and I was about to go to bed, I didn't really want any more, so sorry about that. From the station, it's just a 20-minute walk through the twilight across the city to my hotel for the evening. After an enjoyable walk through the beautifully lit streets of Badajoz, I arrive at the Hotel Condedu where I'll spend the night. Well, it's hardly the Ritz. At just €28.50 for the night, the accommodation is pleasant enough, and I sure as heck have no complaints for spending the night here. After a good night's sleep, I check out of my hotel at noon. As the one train of the day to Entroncamento doesn't depart until after 4 PM, I now have a few hours to kill, and what better way to spend it than exploring this historic city. I've decided to come for a wander around Alcabada de Badajoz, which are ruins of what was once a Moorish citadel or fortified city. The structure seen here today was constructed in the 12th century and was even in use as recently as the Napoleonic Wars in the early 1800s. Eventually, it's time to make my way back to the building site that is Estacio de Badajoz in order to catch my train across the border to Portugal. The station doesn't feature anything in the way of shops or eateries, it's literally just a hall with a departure board and a ticket office. That said, the city centre is just a short walk away and you'll find plenty of shops and restaurants there. So, I guess you're dying to see what state-of-the-art train is going to be taking us on the near 3-hour journey across the border to Entroncamento. Oh, sorry, did I say state of the art? Because I actually meant this little diesel rail car built in the 1950s. Alright, I'm being a bit harsh. Although this may not be great if you're commuting on this every day, for a one-time user like me, this is cool as heck. These units were built by Allen of Rotterdam between 1954 and 1955 and were extensively refurbished in the early 2000s. They have a top speed of 100 km an hour or 62 miles an hour. It's also worth noting that our last two trains are operated by the Portuguese national operator Comboios de Portugal, or CP for short. Without further ado, let's check out this antique on rails. This train only features second class seating and there are no seat reservations, so I'm free to sit wherever I like. In fact, it's not even possible to purchase tickets beforehand, and the conductor will come round later on to collect my fare. Seating is in a 3+2 configuration, although don't be too put off by this, as these trains are pretty wide. Even without someone sat opposite me, leg space is pretty restrictive. That said, the seats are pretty comfortable thanks to the fact that they're quite well padded. We depart on time just before 4:25 in the afternoon. The ride across to Entroncamento is scheduled to take 2 hours and 50 minutes and will hit our top speed of 100 km an hour for much of the trip. Barely 10 minutes later and we're already across the border in Portugal. As both it and Spain are members of the Schengen zone, there are no formal border checks. However, Portugal is 1 hour behind Spain, so don't forget to adjust your watches accordingly. As we pull into our first stop since crossing the border, Elvas, I'd just like to take a moment to point out the beautiful tiling featured on the walls of the station building. This is a common feature for railway stations in Portugal and I absolutely love it. Shortly after departing Elvas, the conductor comes round to take people's fares. My ticket covers me from Badajoz all the way through to Lisbon and costs €12.20, although this price includes the 25% discount I get for being under 25. The prices aren't listed on the CP website, so I can't give you an exact figure for the full fare, but it should be around €16.25. You should also be aware that it is only possible to buy your ticket using cash. They do not accept card payments on the train. At Abranches, we join the electrified commuter line into Lisbon. Further down the line, we pass Castelo Jalmuro. The structure dates back to medieval times and, as you can see, it's actually built on an island in the middle of the Tagus River. As we pull into Entroncamento, just a quick word about the ride quality of these trains. As you may have expected with them being 70 years old, they're quite rattly with a lot of engine vibrations, but they're still a lot of fun nonetheless. We arrive at the station on time at about 6:15 in the evening, giving us about half an hour to wait for our connecting train through to Lisbon. Entroncamento is notable for being home of the Portuguese National Railway Museum. The museum is well worth a visit if you ever find yourself in the area and is easily accessible from Lisbon in a day. Best of all, entry only costs €5. I've put a few highlights of the museum on screen now for you to look at while we wait for our train. Eventually, the class 2240 EMU that will take me on the 1 hour and 28 minute journey into Lisbon arrives. These are one of the more common regional trains in Portugal and have a top speed of 120 km an hour or 75 miles an hour. Just as on the train over from Badajoz, seating is in a 3+2 configuration, albeit thankfully these seats feature a bit more legroom.
Próxima paragem, Riachos, Torres Novas.
En route, be sure to look out of the right of the train in order to see the stunning station building in Santarém. Now that we're on our final little canter into Lisbon, it's probably time I gave you some parting advice. The total cost for this journey, including the hotel, was €74.30. On the face of it, that might not seem like bad value for money, but when you consider this journey has taken the better part of 28 hours, and that a direct bus from Madrid to Lisbon takes just over 9 hours and costs €15, suddenly it doesn't seem as though taking the train is worth the hassle. Even a flight with a full service carrier, such as Air Europa or TAP Air Portugal, only costs around €25, and that only takes around an hour and a half. Despite the fact that I personally had a good time making this journey, unless travelling between Madrid and Lisbon by train is something you really want to do, I'm going to have to recommend that you choose another mode of transport to travel between the two cities. However, as always, I appreciate that these are just my views and opinions, so be sure to let me know which mode of transport you'd be choosing in the comments below. With that, welcome to what is probably the best known station in Lisbon, Lisboa Oriente, where we arrive a few minutes late at around 8:15. And that's it for this week's video. I do hope you enjoyed. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and enable notifications as I publish new trip reports every Friday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Friday.